Lincoln City Planning Commission meeting is now in session. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. James, could we have a roll call, please?
Lenny Nelson.
Here.
Patty Crowan.
Here.
Miles Schlesinger.
Here.
Joshua Brainerd.
Here.
Marcy Baker.
Here.
Okay. Any agenda changes or revisions?
Yes, we have a couple. One, I just want to add at some point, give a quick update on the open positions and their status. And then the other is to, which segues nicely into the other agenda change, is to postpone the training until the two other members are appointed.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the open positions at the beginning of new business?
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Okay. And deferring the training. Okay. Perfect. Okay. We have minutes from our regular meeting, which was last year, December 17th. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? Okay, I provided just a couple of little grammatical corrections to James, and those have already been taken care of. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
And a second?
Seconded.
All right, it's moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, any discussion? Okay, minutes are done. We have a number of final orders that we need to clean up, and I guess we need a motion and a second and a vote on each one of them. So the first one is the request, the Sutton zone change. We have a final recommendation going to the City Council on that rezone. Do I have a motion to approve that?
I move we approve the final recommendation for the CPA ZC 2019-04 Sutton rezone.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The next one is the, it's oddly named cleanup ordinance, but it's for the accessory dwelling units. The final recommendation that we went through, and just to remind you, that was some language that needed to be adjusted so it was consistent with state code, and we approved that conditionally at the last meeting. So do I have a motion to approve the final recommendation for CPA CZ 2019-0, ZOA 2019-14 ADU cleanup ordinance? I need a motion.
I so move.
Okay, and a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, that's done. The next one is the mobile food units, and we had a final recommendation on the mobile food units to send it on to City Council. In looking at the language that was provided to us of the final recommendation, though, I don't see in it the stipulation to prohibit Class 1 and Class 2, which was part of the motion that was passed at the last meeting. So do we need to add that stipulation into the final recommendation? Okay, so it's consistent with the motion from the last meeting. And with that added into it, do I have a motion for the final recommendation?
Move to approve the final recommendation for ZOA 2019-3 mobile food units.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And the last one is ZOA 2019-16, the RCC zone creation. And I should remember what RCC stands for, Resort Community Commercial Zoning District. That's adding that new zoning district by creating a new chapter to 17, which would be 17.29. Do I have a motion to approve the final recommendation?
I'll motion to approve the final recommendation for ZOA 2019-16 RCC zone creation.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, nice cleanup for last year. Okay, new business. You want to talk about the open positions?
Yes. As the commissioners know, we have 2 open positions. Steve Griffith's term ended the end of December, and he did not choose to continue serving as a commissioner. And we were aware of that not early last year, but November, December-ish. So his position was posted. One application was received from Kim Blackerby. He will be interviewed by City Council on January 13th, and we will see what happens after that. The second position that is open is Marie McFarland. She resigned middle of December, and that position is posted. Thus far, 1 application has been received, McNeil Smith, and we're in the process of doing the background check. So nothing has been scheduled with City Council for the interview. So until we have a full commission, it will be just a reminder to the commissioners that if you are aware ahead of time that you won't be able to attend a meeting, to be sure and let James and I know. If we don't have a quorum, then we will have to cancel the meeting. We are, the meeting schedule for 2020 is the 1st and 3rd Tuesday of every month, with the exception of November and December. We will only be meeting the 1st Tuesday.
Okay. So if the City Council interviews Mr. Blackerby on the 13th, then potentially he could be seated on the 21st?
Correct.
So we might see him at our next meeting.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any questions about the open position? Okay. Okay. We, at the first meeting of every year for the Planning Commission, we elect a chair and a vice chair. So I will now entertain nominations for chair and vice chair for 2020. Thoughts? Anyone?
I'm very happy with the chair we have. Well, I am.
Okay.
I would like to see you continue as chair because Steve was in the position, I think, two years before you took over. And I think it takes a year to get your feet on the ground, and I think you're doing a good job.
Thank you.
I think anybody who can deal with the chance hearing has got their feet on the ground.
Wait a minute, Richard has a
So,
comment.
no, I don't have a comment. The process is somebody nominate,
Oh, I know, we're
and
just
then
talking.
we'll just move on from there, and you close nominations, and, okay. yeah.
I know how it works. If nobody has any other comments, I'll move to that. I know. I nominate our current chair to be chair for 2020.
Okay, does anyone have any other nominations? No, okay, we'll close the nominations.
Lenny, I've never had anybody do this to me during the meeting. That was classic. That was classic.
All right, so do we need to vote?
After, you need to make a motion to close nominations and vote on that.
Okay, I need a motion to close nominations.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now someone make a motion to appoint.
Okay,
What?
I move
Oh, good Lord, Richard. Okay.
that we appoint Patty Crone Chair for 2020.
I'll second that.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to abstain from this vote. Okay, that's that. Now we need a vice. All right. I need a vice. All
Which one would you like?
right. Do I have any nominations for vice chair? Okay, you guys are targets.
I nominate Miles.
I don't wish to take the chair or an assistant chair.
But you've been here second longer than anyone, Miles.
Good people on the commission that could take the chair and Patty's absence. So I appreciate it.
But you're declining.
Apparently, that was a Sherman. If
Sounds like a-
nominated, he will not run.
And if elected, he will not serve. Okay, I would actually like to nominate Marcy for this position of vice chair. You up for that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I'll make a motion to nominate Marcy.
Oh, actually, you would ask if there are any other nominations.
Oh, are
and
there
then
any other nominations?
Somebody want to close nominations?
My candidate dropped out of the running.
God, the process is arduous. All right. I need a motion to close the nominations.
So moved.
All right, and a second.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Now a motion to appoint.
Now a motion to appoint Marcy as vice chair. I'll move to appoint Marcy as the vice chair for 2020.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations. Here, I gotta go. Okay, that's that. We're deferring training, so, thank you all for your continued support, I think.
On the training,
Yes.
you know, I'm legal counsel for the planning commission. Well, I'm legal counsel for the city. One of my jobs is to advise the planning commission. But when, some of you call me, but I always want to encourage you to call me if you have any questions. When you get a training document like this and it's like, oh, did I do something wrong? You can always call me if you don't want to bring it up at the meeting. Or you can always call and say, hey, can I stop by the office? I'm hidden back here, but you just go to the finance counter and say, can you find that guy for me, and I'll come get you.
Okay, thank you for that. It's always good to get, to get a review of what we're doing here, so I'm looking forward to the training, by the way. Okay, overview of 2019 planning.
Yes.
What'd we do?
Well, that's why I thought it would be interesting to do an overview.
Okay,
So I started with staff because the Planning and Community Development Department had quite a bit of staff changes in 2019. I believe Richard Townsend was still the director on January 1st. So he then retired.
in March, maybe?
Yeah, and then Lindsay Zemel was the director, and after a short tenure, she resigned, and I became the director effective November 4th. There wasn't lot of process involved with that. So I wanted to give the commissioners just a little bit of my background. I have over 22 years of planning experience. My father is a licensed land surveyor, has his own business, and so I grew up doing surveying, writing meets and bounds legal descriptions, doing lots of drafting of preliminary plat maps and final plat maps. And so that's how I got my start in planning, and was his planner at his business for a number of years. Was approached by the city of Caldwell to be their senior planner, and I went to work for the city of Caldwell for 8 years as their senior planner before I moved to Oregon. I did a lot at city of Caldwell. Rewrote the entire zoning and subdivision ordinance, created 2 new zones, and revamped the entire development process, and assisted the director with redoing the comprehensive plan. So lots of good experience from Caldwell. And then when I came to Oregon, I was a planner at Washington County. And from there, I was snatched up by private firms who must have just liked me. I don't know. But that was very good. I am a firm believer in a planner having experience on both the public and private sector. I think it bodes well in either place, and highly recommend it for anyone who is in the planning profession, that they have almost equal experience in both sectors. And that gave me a very good background in Oregon land use planning, and I've worked with over probably 30 jurisdictions in their codes and ordinances. So a lot of familiarity with Oregon codes. Anyway, just a little summary of.
Does Idaho have as extensive a land use system as Oregon does?
Oh, no. No, not even close.
Imagine my surprise.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that you could compare it. It's not even apples and oranges. It's more like maybe apples and rutabagas.
Well, there was a time where Florida had almost just changed the names and started to follow Oregon's land use system. Instead of DLCD, they had the Department of Community Affairs. They adopted the Fasano quasi-judicial land use opinion of the Oregon Supreme Court and said, we're going to follow that. So there was a lot of parallels there. And then they had a new governor, and he pretty much dissolved the Department of Community Affairs and threw all that land use stuff away. So for a while, at least, some states do.
Somebody followed Oregon's lead. Well, we're happy to have you, first of all. Is there a plan to backfill your position that you left as senior planner?
There is a plan. The position was posted for a month and a half, and did not receive any candidates with the experience necessary. So we pulled the position, or pulled the posting, and we are waiting on the new HR supervisor to get on board to kind of reassess the situation. Plus, I didn't want to have it posted for a long time. I kind of look at job postings like real estate listings, and when it's posted for a long time,
Something's wrong with the
people
position.
tend to say, that house has been on the market for
Forever.
over a year.
It's
What is
haunted.
wrong with it?
I'm sorry, the new HR position?
Yes.
What's that?
It's
Well,
not,
I know what
not
HR
director.
stands for, I just meant,
Yeah,
are we
it-
getting a new human resources person in the city?
Yeah, and it's not a director. It's Richard. What title did they give it? HR
I wasn't
coordinator,
consulted.
HR supervisor, HR manager. Maybe it's HR
HR
manager.
manager,
Yeah, HR manager.
Oh, okay. All right,
So, yes, so we'll be assessing that. So
okay.
for now, I'm kind of
Is that
doing,
So you're
person
on
been
your own
hired?
for now,
yes, yeah.
with the able help of
With the
of
able help
James
of-
and your other staff.
Yes, which leads me down to the senior planner position is vacant, and we have wonderful James, who began as our new assistant planner on September 4th, as the previous assistant planner retired. Weston Fritz is our other assistant planner, and his 2-year anniversary is coming up March 12th. And then Amanda Gustafson, which most of you probably don't have much interaction with, but she is the permit tech, and her 4-year anniversary is on February 1st, and she handles all of the structural permit applications through Acela, which is the statewide online permitting program for structural permits. So that's a wrap-up of our staff, and the commission itself has had quite a few changes. Josh Brainerd, Marcy Baker, and Lenny Nelson are all new in 2019. 3 commissioners resigned over the course of 2019, and of course, as I just mentioned, Kim Blackerby will be interviewed on January 13th, and the other position is in process of being filled, hopefully sooner rather than later. So what the Planning Commission reviewed last year, you guys were busy. You had 2 appeals. One was a geologic hazard report. One was a vacation rental dwelling land use. There was a vacation rental dwelling license appeal, and the Planning Commission acts as the VRD board for license appeals, and you heard one of those as the VRD board. There were 3 conditional use permits. The kennels for Ocean Lake Veterinary Clinic, the emergency shelter for Chance, and the transitional housing facility for Helping Hands. And there were 4 applications for comprehensive plan map and or zone map amendments. The Surf Tides was one, and that request was denied, recommended for denial by Planning Commission and denied by City Council. There was the creation of 2 new comprehensive plan map designations, the recreation resort mixed use and the resort residential mixed structure. There was then the subsequent implementation of both of those designations on properties in the northern part of Lincoln City. And there was a request by Mr. Sutton for a comprehensive plan map and zone change. Planning Commission recommended denial. And the public hearing with City Council for that case is January 27th. Didn't have any variances in 2019. And we had 13 zoning ordinance amendments. There was a minor amendment to the park zone, the temporary sheltering as accessory uses to worship, to places of worship, the mobile food units and mobile food unit pods, which Planning Commission just heard and recommended approval, and that goes to City Council on February 10th. Allowances for emergency caches, the FEMA maps and updated FEMA ordinance, dock permitting standards, development agreement standards, manufactured dwellings consistency with state law, ADU consistency with state law, the bluff setback amendment, which you will sign the final recommendation at the next meeting. The transitional housing allowances recommended approval, that goes to City Council on January 13th. More ADU consistency throughout Title 17, that goes to City Council on January 27th. And then the creation of the resort community commercial zone goes to City Council also on January 27th. Staff processed 4 property line adjustments, 3 director's interpretation administrative decisions, 6 geologic hazard reports, 16 pre-application conferences, 3 site plan reviews, and 5 tree removal permits. And 2020 looks to be even busier.
Oh, oh dear.
Okay.
Just in the month of February, we have 3 site plan review meetings already scheduled, as
In
compared to
February.
just the 3 that we had in the entire year for 2019. So I think it will be a busy year, which is good. We like busy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. It brought back memories.
I'm sure it did.
And, and it, it reminded me of the work that we've done. I mean, sometimes we, just sort of forget about
Yeah.
things that have passed before us, so I appreciate that overview. But now we look forward
Now we look forward.
with 2020 vision,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So you've put together a work list. Do you want to step through those?
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
I'll start off with department projects, just so that you're aware of kind of some of my goals for the department and what we'll be working on in addition to just our current answering questions, phone, email, etc. We are in the process of completely revising our applications, our forms, checklists, and instructions to go with each one of those. And we're not even halfway through. We've got have the bed and breakfast application, the partition application, and the pre-application conference application complete. And as I said there, we have many more to go, but the goal is to have those all in place by the end of the year with nice checklists and good instructions to help people, to help it be more clear and easier for people to apply for all of these different items that are in the code.
And when you say add checklists and instructions, are those instructions on how to apply, or are those instructions included in the actual activity they're applying for? I don't know, does that make sense?
Kind of a combination, if I understand what you're saying. For instance, I'll start with one that I've already done, the partition application. There, I did a cover sheet with the application form that runs through the instructions and the process. So it says, for instance, I think it starts out by saying something like, obtain the application, complete it in its entirety, submit it with these items. It will take approximately X amount of time to be processed. Once you receive a decision, then your next step is to contact your surveyor to record the final plat, something along those lines. So it kind of walks them through from beginning to end, not only what they need to do, but also what to expect.
So it isn't, you're not looking at particular like licenses and adding any additional requirements or anything to those licenses. You're just simply cleaning up the processing of them. Let me give you an example. In the VRDs, there could be an instruction that all VRDs post an evacuation plan. I don't know if that's actually in the license or not, but if you thought that was a good idea, would you be able to do that? Would you be able to insert that?
There is well, number one, there is a requirement that they post the tsunami evacuation maps.
No, okay.
Yeah, so those have to be posted.
Okay.
And I assume that's what you mean by evacuation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that requirement is there, and that is part of the license renewal. There is also a statement, and I don't remember the exact wording of it, but there is a statement in the license renewal about other conditions, I would need to look it up, but so there is a little bit of leeway, but we still need to comply with the code. If there are specific items that the Planning Commission is interested in adding to process, any of these processes or the licenses themselves, then that would be, keep that in mind and make note to our very last item on ordinance revisions, if any,
Okay,
that the Planning Commission, and so, and that's where I'm going to ask for your feedback on things that you would like to explore in work studies, or that could be as simple as just minor cleanup things.
okay,
That'll be your opportunity to take it away.
okay.
In conjunction with that, I'm reviewing the processes to hopefully eliminate inefficiencies and create some more transparency and quicker review turnaround time. That's kind of in process. It involves different departments, so I've already met with engineering and met with finance and received their feedback, and so now I need to actually meet with my own staff, and we just haven't had time, and flow chart the processes of mostly the building permit applications. That's where we seem to have the most time lag, and where I'm hopeful that we can eliminate some steps and speed that up. Third thing, and this is pretty big, and Mr. James White over there is absolutely fantastic at this, but in conjunction with IT and the city recorder, all the departments in the city have been requested to get their records in order, to make public record requests easier, to make sure that we have backups of everything and that everything is easily searchable, etc. The records for the Planning and Community Development Department are in a state of disarray. So James and I are working very hard to get those all organized and make our IT department happy and make our city recorder happy with being able to just put our finger on a record at any time rather than having to search 3 days for it and still not know where it is. So that is a very big task, and James he'll be spending probably most of at least the first half of the year getting all our records in order for the department. For ordinance amendments, myself personally, and also at the request of City Council, there's quite a list there. The tree protection and preservation ordinance revision, Council has requested that staff look at that. A number of people in the community have requested that. I believe that Planning Commission.
Yeah, I had it on my list for last year.
For last year, okay.
Yeah.
And the current ordinance is very unworkable, in my opinion. It takes staff 30 minutes going back and forth trying to figure out exactly what it is telling us.
Yeah,
There's
it
way
needs to
too
be
much
updated.
subjectivity. It needs to be much more clear and concise and provide clear direction. Probably at a minimum, a tree permit should be required for everything. If it's to remove anything just to, but that gets into work study issues, but
Yeah,
so that's one ordinance amendment.
big one.
Yes. Landscaping ordinance revision, and that's not necessarily to change any content or requirements, but just to reorganize it. It's a little clunky right now, and specifically for the single-family dwelling folks who come in, just don't develop. They're building a house once, and it's a little difficult for them to navigate, and so I want to make it easier, more clear, easier for them to understand. Again, not necessarily changing the content or the requirements, but just the way it's organized.
It's not very user-friendly.
It's not user-friendly at all. Yeah. The parking ordinance, that will be a very minor change at the request of the Urban Renewal and Economic Development Director. And the sign ordinance and the design standards, of course, will complete what we started last year. annexation and procedures, and these are, it's really kind of one and the same because annexation is a procedure. Most other jurisdictions in Oregon and also in Washington, their application procedures are broken down into type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, and then every type of application is lined up under one of those, and it makes it very easy for processing applications and explaining to individuals the application type. Lincoln City's ordinance does not have that, and I have been itching to get that changed ever since I started in April. And so, again, it's not really a content change. Most of the processing and procedures is required by state law. So notifications when a public hearing is required, et cetera, those things would not change. It's just a matter of organizing them. It's organization, actually, is what it is. It's organizing our procedures into type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. And when you see the chart that I have put together, it'll be very clear, whereas now it's not. And we have site plan review in one section of the code. We've got conditional use permit in another section of the code. It just does not flow well, and it's not very user-friendly, to borrow the chair's term. Special events as accessory use to schools and possible inclusion in other zones. This is at the request of the city attorney. That'll be very minor. Also at my request, to avoid doing director's interpretations on a continuous basis. The current Title 17 has a lot of places that rely on the planning director's decision and interpretation, and in my opinion, that's really inappropriate, and it puts way too much power in the hands of the planning director, and I don't, I'm not comfortable with that. I think there needs to be more clear and concise language in the zoning ordinance, and if it is subjective, then it needs to come to a decision-making body like the Planning Commission or the City Council. So some of the changes in procedures will eliminate that, but that's also the impetus behind the special events as an accessory use. Down the line, if we get to it, we would like to create the resort neighborhood zone, which will implement the resort residential mixed structure comprehensive plan designation. Note that's at the bottom of the list. And then number 10 is just a general cleanup of Title 17, and that's if I have time. And it's mainly just to remove inconsistencies. There are sections and subsections and subsections, and they'll mention one thing in this subsection, and it'll be different in this subsection, and it'll be different yet again in this section. And I'd like to just go through, do a search and replace, and make everything consistent. It'll make it easier for staff to administer Title 17, and it'll make it easier for developers and residents and real estate agents to navigate through the code. So that's the goal on that.
I'm not seeing that that major effort, the revision of the comp plan, anywhere on your list.
Revision of the comp plan is on the list. It's not on this list.
Oh.
The revision of the comp plan, I keep going back and forth. It's going to be probably a bigger undertaking than any of the past staff had anticipated as I look at some of the statewide planning goals, and specifically in reference to our natural resources and the assessments that were done in the current comprehensive plan are old, 1995
Yeah.
for wetlands and riparian areas. Those are going to have to be redone,
Yeah.
in my opinion, to have a successful, complete revision of the comprehensive plan. Those types of assessments have to revolve, we've got to do requests for qualifications, or requests for qualifications and requests for proposals, because we will have to have professionals do those assessments of riparian areas, aesthetic resources for the trees, the significant wetlands, and that is going to take time and budget.
Yeah. Well, and in efforts that I've been involved in where we've revised comp plans in other communities, it has been, there's been an enormous public participation
Yes.
part of it. So do you envision that same type of setup where we would have some real active public participation in the comp plan?
I do, absolutely. And as I would anticipate, with Planning Commission's direction, you would be either part of the committee or a few of you on the committee, if not all of you on the committee. But I would envision establishing a comprehensive plan revision committee with, with representation of various facets of the community,
Yeah.
including business owners, real estate agents, builders, contractors, developers, and even have subcommittees under that would focus on each of the different goals, because there are a lot of state
few.
goals, statewide goals, and it would be a lot for one committee. So I kind of, but the committee would take the lead, and then perhaps with the committee develops subcommittees as necessary to address each of those goals. It's going to be a huge undertaking. I definitely need to have a senior planner on board before I even look at starting.
Is there money in the budget to do that type of effort?
Right now there is, I believe, $70,000 left in this year's budget for contract help. Contract meaning outside,
Yeah.
those type things. So if my hope is that I can get someone on board before the end of this budget season, so we can start looking at least getting the structure formed of a committee, and who we might want to, or the process of going out for consultants.
Yeah.
And if I don't, I will carry that forward into the next budget season, and I will be requesting additional funds on top of that for the next budget season.
Okay.
We will have to have it in order to do a successful revision of the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, yeah, and we definitely need,
How long do you expect
happen.
the thought processes before we get to the final plan?
A good comprehensive plan revision takes probably at least 2 years. I don't see it taking any less than that.
Just the goal 5, natural resources goal took 5.
Yeah.
I began to believe I was never going to be done with it.
Commissioners, under your code, you have a committee for citizen involvement, which is the goal 1 committee to involve the community in the process of the comprehensive plan amendment. We also have a section under the Planning Commission procedures in the code where you will serve as the committee for citizen involvement. Of course, you might want to have a discussion about this. Do you want to serve? It doesn't say you shall. It says, well, we can, if we don't want to go through the process to create a larger committee, you can serve as the committee for citizen involvement. So you could, recommend to the council that the council establish a ad hoc committee for citizen involvement for the comp plan because it's that important, and then maybe some of you serve on it. Maybe not. It's up to you. But it's in there in the code, it's an option. But if we don't do the process of setting up a new committee, you will serve as the Citizen Involvement Committee.
Okay, that's something to think about. Thank you. All right, moving on. We're looking forward to that.
Yes, I know you are.
Yeah,
And I am too. It's going to be,
well, it's time.
it is time, definitely, and I'm hoping that some of these kind of minor things, like getting things cleaned up in the processes, so that we have kind of a smooth process and flow while we're going through the comprehensive plan process.
Yeah, yeah, make your other work more efficient.
Exactly. And Title VII, I anticipate that once the comprehensive plan update is complete and adopted, then there will be major revisions to Title 17 so that the zoning ordinance is now
Right.
implementing what has been put into place in the comprehensive plan.
Mhm.
So that's why I say general cleanup of Title 17, not really changing any content, just getting it so that it's workable during the 1 to 2 year period where we're getting the comprehensive plan redone.
Okay. All right.
It looks like, based upon feedback from various directors in the city, that we've got a couple zone changes coming up at the initiation of the city, at the direction of and when indicated by the Urban Renewal and Economic Development Director. We'll have the zone change for the resort community commercial zone. The Parks and Recreation Director has approached me about rezoning a portion of the park on the east of Northwest Kiel, because right now it's zoned multiple family residential and parks are not allowed in that zone. And I believe that's where the trail in the story circle is. So that will be coming before you post haste. At some point,
Is that where the dog park's going to be too?
the dog park will be that's a portion of it.
That
They're
part.
adjacent to each other, but the dog park itself is actually located in the professional campus zone, which does allow parks.
Okay.
It's just the trail getting to it.
Curious that multifamily residential doesn't allow parks. That seems weird, but okay.
At some point on the list, the 35 acres on the east side of the knoll could possibly be rezoned. There are some places in the city at the request of the Parks and Recreation Director that could possibly be rezoned to park. And then again, application of the resort neighborhood zone, when that's created, at the direction of and when indicated by the Urban Renewal and Economic Development Director. And I have specific questions for you folks because I have been approached on both of these items, but I do not want to spin my wheels and waste time on zoning ordinance amendments if I don't think they're going to go anywhere. So one of those is Planning Commission's thoughts on removing residential uses as permitted and conditional in the general commercial zone and the recreation commercial zone. Something for you to ponder, perhaps come back.
Can I ask a question about that?
Mhm.
Because I did sort of ponder it briefly. Would that limit BRDs in those zones?
Well, that's a very good question.
Honestly, a VRD is typically residential construction, and a couple of years back, we amended the residential zone to kind of split and recognize VRDs as a commercial use. But basically, I think it would affect, simply, you wouldn't be able to build single-family residential, which is what becomes a VRD. You'd have to build basically a hotel. So that would be kind of contrary to what we wanted to do in terms
Right.
of direct VRDs to the commercial zone, so that there wasn't the adverse effect on residential areas.
Okay, so that's something to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And also, would it affect the development of like a work-live complex where you might have retail on the bottom and living space on the top?
No, it's my understanding from the broaching of this topic that mixed use would remain. So mixed use meaning commercial on the ground floor and residential on upper levels.
So it wouldn't eliminate all residential uses, but it would have to be constructed as a mixed-use development.
Right.
Yeah, and you saw a little bit of that in the RCC zone that we put before you. There was a separate category of basically residential over commercial.
So would it affect a conversion to that? If somebody wanted to convert something that's currently in the commercial zone into a mixed commercial and residential building, could they do that?
I think if you have an existing commercial use and you wanted to redevelop and put residential over it, I think that would make it vertical mixed use, which we'd be in favor of. And I think you're probably going to be stuck building to commercial standards. So I don't see that if we said no new single-family residential, that would be, pretty much eliminate the
Yeah.
standalone vacation rental, but would allow for other residential options, I think.
So it seems to me that there was a movement in the state of Oregon that might have sputtered and died, but to eliminate the whole idea of single-family zoning, single-family residential zoning, and I think we were kind of exempt from it because we don't have the population numbers. I mean, there was a limited.
Yeah, House Bill 2001 passed, it's actually encouraging housing, and it's requiring single-family housing and duplexes in all zones, in
But
all
not-
residential zones. But it
wasn't it an
didn't touch
elimination
commercial.
of the single-family residential zone? So in other words, trying to make it so that you couldn't, that a city could no longer zone an area for only single-family residential?
There was some talk of that, and there were some people
Well,
who,
and that's what happened with the accessory dwellings as well. They're,
Right, they added, they
yeah,
got rid of
they're
the,
added to
not
Yeah.
all
all
of them.
zones, all residential zones.
the thought being that the more multifamily duplex and higher than, that you can get, then the more housing you have.
Right. Okay. So we can
So,
ponder
yeah,
these
it's just
more.
something to ponder. These are just
Okay.
questions. There's no ordinance, no work study. It's something,
Okay,
if you think that you would like to discuss it further, then we have a work study.
okay, okay.
And this is a big one. Planning Commission's thoughts on reducing the residential parking requirement. Right now, it's 1.5 to 1 for multifamily dwellings. And I have been approached to reduce that to 1 to 1.
And it's bedrooms, right? One parking
Per
Is it
It's,
per unit?
yeah, it's 1.5 parking spaces per
For
one
each
unit.
unit?
And the request is to change
That
the
to
ordinance
one.
from 1 parking space per unit. Now, I have seen, I have done projects with ordinances that have parking requirements based on the number of bedrooms. For instance, it's 0.75 for a studio,
Yeah,
1.25
it seems to me we
for
did
a
that
1,
for
2.
one that was behind, near the hospital.
Well, we actually did, last year,
Right.
make changes to our parking requirements and reduce parking requirements. I'm not sure if it was down to this 1.5.
No, or yes, it's,
Yeah, so
the current
before that
requirement
it
is
was-
1.5 to 1.
Before that, it was 2. I can't remember, but I thought we just did that to some extent. So you have additional requests to?
Yes. And I was very cautious in what I said.
Well, You know, this is a tough one, because philosophically, I would like to see people get rid of cars. So, but the other side of that coin is, we live in an area where people come here as a resort, and they come in multiple cars frequently. You know, we'll see people at the house across the street from us that's a 3-bedroom house that will show up with 9 cars. So while I know there are regulations, VRD regulations on the books suggesting they can only park a certain number, enforcement of those regulations are problematic. I'd have to be convinced that this was a good idea to reduce this further at this point. That's just my personal opinion. Parking's an issue in this town.
Yeah, and the city
And
council
this-
just passed the storage of vehicles. So it seems there must be a problem with not having enough parking spots in the first place because of the way things have been developed. And
Right, things are
I think
being-
about big apartment complexes, you've got one, there's nowhere for any of those people to have anyone visit or park. They're going to
Yeah.
park on the street.
Well, in addition, our city is not heavily developed with things like sidewalks and pedestrian walkways, which is something that we deal with lots throughout
Yeah,
our meetings,
yeah,
and even city
yeah.
council as well. So
Yeah.
I would agree that it'd be something we'd have to take a closer look at.
Yeah.
Okay.
The size of our streets, to some degree, creates this problem, because in some streets, if you park on both sides, you have to drive a bicycle down the street.
Yeah, I think if anything,
Yeah, I run into that every time I go to Bimart.
Yeah. I hear you.
We'll park on both
That's one of
sides
the better
back
parts.
there. Okay, so that,
Okay,
I don't know if that
perfect.
gives you any guidance.
That does,
on
yes,
what we're
that
thinking.
that gives me guidance.
Okay.
And then that's it for me. It's,
Okay, but
what
then
would
you
you
have a
folks
number
like to
3.
see? Yep.
That's for us.
You know, and this kind of goes to the comp plan, but also I think specifically more to maybe the tree ordinance. I'd like to see us sort of step boldly into the next century and acknowledge the role of climate change and what's happening on the planet, particularly with our tree ordinance, and maybe recognize the importance of them, and at the same time acknowledge the difficulty that a heavily wooded plot of land presents to a developer, and perhaps consider some sort of credits to the developer for saving trees of certain size, and that's something we're obviously going to have to work on in the tree ordinance, but I'd like to see us acknowledge that and start to put a little more value on the native vegetation or the old vegetation that's in the city.
Okay.
And I also, maybe we should look into this issue of parks in the multifamily residential zone.
Yeah, that's a little strange. I didn't
Okay.
really
Maybe
notice
think
that
about that one. And then, you know, in going back to the question I had for you when you were talking about kind of reviewing your processes and applications and checklists and things, we clearly have a fireworks problem in this town, and we have a group, I guess, that has been working diligently for the last couple years to come up with some solutions to deal with some of the illegal fireworks that we have. I know one of the 3 prongs of the approach that has been taken is education. So I would like to see something in the VRD licensing language that requires a notice of the illegality of fireworks, because apparently, according to our city manager, a lot of the fireworks that are shot off in this town are by visitors, bringing them from that dreadful state to the north, so where they can, I guess, buy them legally. So, I mean, I'd like to see us sort of be a little more proactive in educating our visitors of what's legal and what isn't legal. And I think that might perhaps assist our law enforcement folks, because they have a tough job on the 4th of July in this town. So
Okay.
that's my 2 cents. Anyone else want to add anything? Josh, you got anything?
That's all I got.
I had something that I had kind of thought about. I was just kind of curious of the possibilities on, the city owns quite a bit of land and got a good deal on a bit of land, and we talk a lot about affordable housing and that we need affordable housing, and what I would really like to see Lincoln City be kind of on the forefront of is offering individuals an opportunity for ownership through something possibly like a community land trust is a way that other towns have done it and made affordable options, you know, for small lots, and you develop your own thing and you own the house but not the land, and that land stays in a trust and is available affordably. And I was just kind of curious about, you know, alternative options other than, you know, trying to expect large developers to build
Okay.
large multifamily affordable apartments, you know, something where a single family could develop something that could be very ecological, like a yurt or a tiny house, you know, affordably, and start building their own equity rather than renting.
Okay.
Oh.
The Economic Development Director, Allison Robertson, we will be meeting in a week, 2 weeks, to put together a kind of an affordable housing, workforce housing presentation to update suggestions to give to City Council. And so I will include that, that suggestion.
Good. Okay. Yeah, it's a good idea. Any other ideas? More work we want to pile on ourselves
Sure,
for
why
next
not?
year? All right. Thank you for that. It was a good summary. Any reports or comments? Not hearing any. Future agenda items. It's our next meeting. We may have a new commissioner.
May have a new commissioner, and there are 2 cases. We have conditional use permit from Devil's Lake RV Park. They want to add 4 additional spaces. I've barely looked at it, but it appears perhaps that one of the spaces does not meet the size requirement. So that will be addressed in the staff report. But and then we have an appeal on a VRD land use decision. It was an accessory VRD, and a spot came open on the wait list, and so it became a regular unlimited use VRD, and it was that notice of decision that
Spark the appeal.
that sparked the appeal.
Okay. And then we also get transitional housing back, correct? We left the record open. We left, what did we do?
That was Bluff.
Oh, the bluff. I'm sorry,
Bluff.
you're right,
Yeah.
the bluff.
Yes.
We left that record open so the tribes could comment.
Yeah.
So that comes back.
Yes.
Okay. Is that it?
That should be it for the 21st.
Okay. Nothing else?
That's it.
Okay. We're adjourned.